Glad to know you're still with us at Spectrum Television, talking about the Rise and Shine show, getting you lighted up on today's edition, the Thursday edition. And of course, don't forget today's World Health Day. And it's a day where we have to reflect about the different things we are doing to hurt the environment, which in turn affects our health and of course affect our lifespan on Earth. But at this moment, I'm going to let Otto do the introductions. We have an amazing personality in the house who is going to help us, throw more light on the issues surrounding our health today.
Yeah, talking about an interesting personality, as you can see, she is Dr. Isu Precious Aloyede, and she is the head of Pediatrics Department, University of Uyo. It's good to have you, ma'am.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here.
Yeah, really good. And you would attest to the fact that we have, this year's theme is our planet, our health. And coming to planet spectrum, we have a greener planet, and we call it the beautiful hills. Well, what does today really mean for Nigeria or for the world at large?
Well, today is the day that the WHO set apart to celebrate the World Health Day. Every year has different themes, but this year we are actually looking at how our planet, our environment affects our health. So what both our actions and inactions do to our environment that makes our health either improve or deteriorate.
Well, I would like to find out, it's not enough to have such a day with such an interesting subject. How do you think these days has impacted in the consciousness of a typical individual living in Nigeria or living in the world, especially in Nigeria? Let me bring it out to Nigeria and Akwa Ibom. Do you think the consciousness is there?
Well, I don't really think the typical man on the streets has the consciousness of our health, our planet for today. So I think that is part of why you are doing this program, to bring it to the public awareness that such a thing exists. And we know that our environment is made up of everything around us. So the air we breathe, the water we drink, the food we eat, everything. And of course, if you live in Nigeria, you should understand that this year has been particularly hot.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but
Yes,
for the first time I noticed I wake up at night sweating. I thought something was wrong with me, and I had to discuss with a colleague. And she told me it happens to her also, so I just said, okay, I'm normal. So this is part of what is happening in our planet. Something is happening that is making the weather condition hotter than before. So this is part of why we are creating this awareness about our health and our planets.
Okay, so talking about our health and our planet, we know you like you rightly mentioned at the introductory stage of your comment that our actions and inactions have to a larger extent affected our environment, which has in turn affected us. Now, can you throw more light on some of the actions you believe we have done as humans that are impacting negatively on our environment?
Starting from home, the cooking fuels we use, so we are still burning lots of fossil fuels, firewood, coal, and this all have an impact on air pollution. Lifestyle habits like smoking, smoking doesn't affect just the smoker, it affects those around them, what is known as second-hand, even third-hand smoking. If we look at the way we dispose our refuse, if you go around Uyo, you see how the city is at times. There's a lot of waste everywhere, not just refuse, even sewage. Some homes, especially if you go to the slums, or even around, you see people defecating randomly, and all these things end up polluting our waterways. Because when it rains, it washes down into the river, the stream that people are still drinking from. So you see how it's affecting us. we look at even our eating habits. The idea that if you are rich, you have to eat lots of refined products is also not helping us. Because with that comes the need for the use of all the growth altering things we use in raising our animals. So the feeds, we know how they're genetically modifying everything. So we eat all these things, and there are different diseases that come with all this. So those are the actions. Some
of the
not
actions.
more. Yes.
Now, I want to take you from the angle of the waste. You're a medical practitioner, and we know that recently, I think the House of Assembly have come out to say that the way medical waste being disposed in the country are not helpful to the environment and, of course, helpful to the Nigerian system. So, what would be your comment on that?
Well, my major comment is that medical wastes have a way that they are supposed to be disposed, and most medical wastes should actually be incinerated. So if we go around Oyo, I don't know how many of our hospitals actually have incinerators.
So who is to be blamed? Is it the hospital management or the government?
Well, we know that for the health system, it's multifactorial. So you cannot put blame on one person. Yes. So the hospital management has to be aware and to implement the fact that this is how our waste should be disposed, and this should be communicated to the government. As you know, all these things require funding. That is why I say it's multidisciplinary.
Well, we know that April 7th, which is the World Health Day, has been celebrated 72nd. This is 72nd time, and that's quite a large number. Well, our concern is for this number of years, what has been that remarkable achievements that we say, okay, this is the effect of celebrating World Health Day?
Just like everything, we have seen that diseases that you don't talk about again in advanced countries, we are still talking about them in Africa and African countries. So we can see that where there is a political will to implement the things that are celebrated, things are actually happening. We talk about mosquito. Malaria was common in the Americans. They actually brought it here. But now,
it is no longer
there because they have done what they need to do to eradicate the parasites in the vector. But we sit down here and we're all waiting for donors to do it for us. And what donors do for us is just send in their medications. So we are just treating. Meanwhile, the important thing is actually prevention. When you are able to prevent, then you don't spend so much money on curative care.
So the typical African person would say we have been using the normal prescriptions given by the medical expert, by environmental expert, which is keeping your environment clean and then making sure that there are no waterlogged where the mosquitoes can find breeding space. But I before you came on the show, I had a particular experience within this hot season that we've had where there was nowhere there was a water clock. And then I got to discover an unusual place, like my partner would call it, where there was still a clogging, where from findings the plumbing said such instance shouldn't be, because naturally when you're using the restroom, the water should all be emptied. But I discovered for some reason or the other there was some fault, and then the water doesn't go until you would have to maybe push something down to push the water out. And I discovered another breeding space for mosquito, which I eventually took care of through a correctional job. Now, a lot of persons will say we keep our environments clean, but we still get mosquitoes. Now, how do we handle such scenarios? And I know that some agencies, like you rightly say, would always give us the medicine, the medication. Then we have mosquito nets. And sometimes people get to use mosquito nets and then they come down with illness. Factoring in all of this, how does the average man now get to go around preventing himself and his family from, contacting something like that?
That's why I said in the first place that when we're talking about environment, it's multidisciplinary. Your family alone cannot prevent malaria. Why? Because you can keep your home clean, take away all stagnant water and all that. But your children go to school. How is the school environment? You go to church. How is the church environment? You go to markets. How is the environment there? On the streets, how are you keeping things? So this is it. So inside your home, well, fine. It may look as if you have done all you can do, but you are not at home 24 hours. To that exposure you have in other places where things are not done well, will give you the illness that you may be thinking you have been able to avoid.
Well, we'll go on a short time out, doctor, and when we return, we'll be talking about other factors that is affecting our planet, because you would agree that it's not just environmental, whereas the malaria that we have, it goes a long way to the gas flaring, the ozone layer depletion, and all those dynamics. And maybe we could try to find a possible way of maybe Nigerians to avoid some of these effects on individuals living in Nigeria, but that will be after this time out. So please stay. Thanks for staying on. Yes, the show is still Rise and Shine, reaching you live from the beautiful hills of Ibiakuran. And of course, we are still here with Dr. Iso, who is shedding more light on the World Health Day and possibly how Nigerians can achieve a greener environment to save our planet. Well, you mentioned quite a number of things that is affecting the planet. Let's look at some farming activities, because we live in a country where, not just a country, where farming is being promoted, and most times not done in the most healthy form that could conserve the planet. And you understand that quite a number of factors might mar the achievement of a safer planet for us all, because you see the emission of carbon from generators and all of that. And I'll put it amidst all this, as a pediatrician and a doctor, what's the way forward?
Well, I think we are going into air pollution now. So things that pollute our air, from our generators at home, our vehicles on the road. They made the big trucks, the diesel engines, that there's no legislation, they just move as they like, smoking. Bush burning, which is what you're commenting about, farming.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of bush burning. One, it's because of the belief, that was how I came and saw my parents do it, so we continue that way. And of course, the poverty also. Because bush burning is a cheaper way of clearing your farm. You just set it on fire and it does the work for you. But of course, no one is thinking of the adverse effects. You have talked about gas flaring, which is a big, big issue. Refining of illegal fuel, as we know about the Port Harcourt suits issue. Our fishing ports also are not left out. I've done some work in fishing ports and I've seen the effects of on the children who live there, that when you compare them to other children in other settlements, their lung function is actually poorer and they are more prone to respiratory illnesses than other children. So you can see that this is something that would take more than just wishing. It's something that both the individuals have to be aware of the adverse effects of these things, like all the illnesses, respiratory illnesses, cardiovascular illnesses, the cancers that you get, chronic lung diseases like asthma, because when these particles, or they have things that when people inhale, they go to cause a lot of issues. So it starts with community awareness, enlightenment programs like we are doing, and it comes down to enforcing legislations. If you go into our law books, they actually are legislation. There's something called the Clean Air Act, at which in every environment there's a particular air quality. And if you exceed, if there are some particles which you call particulate matter, and other particles like we say 2. When you see us saying PM 2.5, and some particular matter, at a particular level they must not go above. And there are actually legislations for this, but we know that they are not being enforced. So the matter of gas flaring, there are ways in which the gas could actually be trapped. See how expensive cooking gas is. And we flare, in fact, Nigeria after Russia was the highest gas flarer in the world. And we are losing so much money from flaring this gas, which if we could contain and turn it to use for our purposes, both for electricity and even for household domestic cooking and other things, we would make more money from it. So it has to do with the political will to enforce the legislations. But we know how things are in this country. Most times anything goes. So it's really, really difficult, but this is actually the solution. Enforcing the legislations, public awareness, so everybody comes in to work, both the oil companies, the government, the individuals, the community leaders. Because you stay in your community, things are happening in your community leader, what are you doing about it? Is it just to fight for some form of compensation, some money? They give you the money and life continues. So these are the things we are looking at as solutions.
Well, when it comes to celebrating days like this, I feel these are times where NGOs can come together and bring up these issues to government and say, this is this, this is this. If we continue like this is what is going to happen in the next few years in the future. And I think if people can do that, if NGOs, individuals can come up on days like this to do that, to a large extent, implementation might just perhaps be possible. But we seem not to see those activities come to play. Why so?
Well, some of those activities are actually going on, but you may not know. Right now, I belong to the Nigerian Thoracic Society. I'm on the national committee that is acting on the Port Harcourt suits and what is happening. We have actually deliberated and we have released a communique that I've given to the government to show them the effects and what to do. So we do this, but in the long run, we cannot take the laws into our hands. All we can really do is advocacy. So we are advocating. In fact, our last conference in November, this was one of the major issues. Lung health and environment. We dealt a lot with it, but the Lagos, I know that the Lagos State governor and his wife were quite interested. In fact, they went as far as they had to do some work in the abattoirs in their states because they're having lots of issues. The way they were burning the animals and all that, they had to relocate it. So some individual governments are actually doing something. Individual states, depending on who is on the helm of affairs. But we really need more national action and integration.
You said something about advocacy. Do you think issues like this are getting the needed advocacy to send the right message across?
No, I'm saying that some people are advocating, like Nigerian Thoracic Society. We are advocating.
That's in the behind and the paperwork.
Okay, so in as much as we agree that there are NGOs who are advocating for the right thing to be done, you would agree with us that advocating is not just enough. I mean, you are an NGO at the end of the day, so we need the larger society to join the bandwagon if the advocacy is going to work. But I want to move away from that. Recently, the African Center for Disease Control came out to say that the effect of the depletion in the ozone layer and all of the harms that are being done to the environment would have a more significant health challenges, particularly on the female gender. Now, as a medical expert, I would want you to comment on that. To what extent are we expecting some changes when it comes to the health of the women folk as a result of the dangers done to the ozone system?
Well, as a result of the dangers done to the ozone system, we know that, as I said, that some illnesses that are associated with this ozone center depletion. But one of the issues why the female's gender is actually even more affected is that apart from some studies that have been carried out, both in Nigeria and places like India, have shown that because women do most of the cooking, household cooking, especially for those women who cook a lot with firewood, they are more prone to chronic obstructive lung diseases. So you see them, you see somebody saying, my grandmother has asthma, and you ask what age, they'll tell you she was 50, 40. You know that is not asthma. It's most likely chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, COPD, which is more of a disease of the elderly, older people. Asthma actually starts in childhood. So of course, we are seeing more of that in the female gender. Of course, we're also seeing more of some cancers, both leukemias, ovarian cancers that are linked to this depletion and all the pollutants that people are inhaling. So that is why it seems one of the reasons being advocated on why the female gender is more affected. Of course, in everything, in Africa, example, who goes to the stream more to get water?
Children.
So when the streams are polluted, those are the first people to. So this is just.
Well, in the light of all this, we know that to achieve a greener, safer planet, all hands must be on deck. You've talked about policy, you've talked about NGOs advocating, and also to a large extent dependent on who is at the helm of affairs in a particular state or society, as the case may be. But what is the position, or what should be the attitude of every individual towards the planet?
Every individual should take responsibility for the planet. And in fact, you are the first, you're the most responsible person for your own health. So that's where it starts from. So what habits are you engaging in? Without people, of course, the planet has its issues. But if you are also in optimal health, with a good immune system, you may not likely go down as fast as someone else who is sickly. So your own health, exercise, good nutrition, healthy diet, the habits, and of course, you know, in senior societies, most people are now cycling and walking to work because people are trying to reduce the amount of emissions from vehicles. But in Nigeria already, when we know we have a very good public transport system. So you could see in a country where there are good buses, rails, so most people would rather join. So you see like 50, 100 people in one bus. So that takes up how many cars out of the routes. We don't have it here. So those are all the things. So we are all responsible for planting trees in our houses and not just doing concrete. And all of us are doing one style or the other. Then that we still need these trees to help us as they release oxygen, we breathe better, and they absorb the carbon dioxide we actually send out. So
Wow.
these are all the ways.
Well, indeed, it was nice having you on the show. Thank you very much for coming through.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, we look forward to another conversation of this magnitude. Perhaps, would it last till next year, or maybe we should bring you on very soon? Well, we've been speaking with Dr. Iso Oloyade, and she is the head pediatrics department, University of Uyo. She has dealt exhausted the topic, I must say, and insightful. Everyone has a thing or two to take home. And yes, the message is we should maintain a safer planet for us all, because it is our collective responsibility. Of course, the theme for this year's World Health is talking about our planet, our health. It is ours, so it is our responsibility to ensure that we have a saner planet by not indulging in some activities that might not actually be adding value to the planet. So yes, it's about time we stopped the act of improper waste disposal. Yes, it's about time we stopped bush burning. I know farmers might hunt me for that, but well, it is what it is.